Could talk all day about success in any industry, but I might as well bring up the guy who knows more about it than me. And with that, I'd like to introduce this next session, which I'm so excited for you guys. So many of you know already Darren Hardy. And Darren is the publisher and editorial director of the magazines you have sitting in front of you. He's the leader of Success Magazine, and he is a visionary force, this guy, having come in and taken over the magazine and led it in such positive directions in the last few years is like astounding what he's done there to me. I mean, just astounding. He sits in the chair at Success of Orson Swett Marden and W. Clement Stone, Napoleon Hill, Og Mandino. Like, he holds the chair of legends. And from that chair, you know, he's really been leading this industry. Even before he came to Success Magazine, he's been in the industry and leading personal growth for about 17 years now, where he has, you know, developed thousands of television shows based on these two personal development networks that he led. He has interviewed everybody in the space who's a success, not just in the quote-unquote smaller, narrow expert field, but the broader global world. Sir Richard Branson, so he interviewed Steve Jobs. He's interviewed Lance Armstrong and Colin Powell and Donald Trump, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And Brendan Burchard, and he just really... I love this guy. And he has really, really done an extraordinary job over there. And, you know, he's also the author of this new book called The Compound Effect. And my friend David Bach called this book the new Bible of self-improvement. It's so good. And we just found out that this week it hit New York Times and USA Today bestseller this week. With that, an awesome Experts Industry Association welcome from the leader of our field, Success Magazine, Mr. Darren Hardy.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you. Well done.
Enjoy this group, huh?
Yeah, thanks.
Darren Hardy!
Thank you. Thank you. So I don't know about yours, but my childhood sucked. My parents divorced when I was 18 months old, and my mother didn't want me, so she gave me up to my father. As a matter of fact, when my mother originally found out that she was pregnant with me, she got mad. And then later, when she found out I gave her stretch marks, she got really angry. And after I was born, she was generally disinterested. It was kind of an ugly baby. That might have contributed to it a little bit. But luckily for me, you know, she was just one of those women who never really wanted to be a mother. And luckily, she admitted that to herself, and she just gave me up to my father. Now, my dad, he was only 24 years of age at the time, so he didn't really know what to do with me either. He had just moved from the San Francisco Bay Area to what seemed like the middle of nowhere, Albuquerque, New Mexico, to become an underpaid university football coach. And so this was his parenting solution. Shove me in the corner of a couch, barricade me with pillows, and put headphones on my head. That stunned look was the look I had for most of my childhood. He was pretty neglectful, too. You can see you kind of had to fend for yourself. To say that my dad wasn't exactly the nurturing type is a dramatic overstatement that is comical unto itself. My dad was a muscle-bound, aggressive alpha male that we affectionately called around the house as a bit Neanderthal. And if you've never seen a Neanderthal, this is what one looks like. And my father, he parented like he coached football. So there was no whining, no excuses, no blaming, lots of yelling and screaming, and lots of cursing. As a matter of fact, do you remember the movie Full Metal Jacket? I was raised by Sergeant Gunnery. And my dad was famous for one of his coaching philosophies, and that was no matter how hurt a player got on the field, they were not allowed to come out of the game. In one game, this linebacker wobbled to the sideline and begged to be taken out of the game, and my father yelled, "Not unless you're showing bone." And he pulled back his shoulder pad, and out was sticking his collarbone like through his neck skin like a Thanksgiving turkey. So whenever any of us kids needed to stay home from school because we were really sick, we would say, Dad, can we stay home from school? And he would yell from the other room, not unless you're showing bone. So we'd pick ourselves up and go to school. So the other thing that happened is when I was 4 years old, my father married my stepmonster. And I did not mispronounce that. And she, because she was jealous of my relationship with my father, she had 2 other children with him. She did everything she possibly could to ostracize me from the family. I was literally the redheaded stepchild. And you could see that my father also cut my hair. So this dysfunctional childhood is the reason why I'm the functional achiever that I am today. Let me explain. It is because of going through these abandonment issues is the reason why I'm vigorously self-reliant. Because I was raised by Sergeant Gunnery is the reason why I'm also very self-motivated. Because I had to achieve in order to earn his respect and his love and his attention is the reason why I'm so motivated, goal-oriented, and results-driven. And a lot of times I think people, they look at their childhood as wounds. And I say it is your adversity that is your advantage. That having gone through difficulty is like to your emotional and psychic body is like working out a muscle. The way you work out a muscle is that you put stress on it. You create pain. And while you are actually doing this repetition, you are destroying the muscle. You're tearing the fibers. And in rest, it grows back bigger than it was before. And so I guess the first message that I want to give to you is that I hope that your childhood sucked too. Because that means you have developed the muscles it's going to take for you to achieve what normal mortals cannot achieve because they have not had the opportunity to develop the muscles that gives them that strength and that vigor. So turn your adversity into an advantage. And stop looking at whatever happened to in your childhood as wounds and look at them as the muscles that you have developed for you to do the superhuman things that you're going to go out into the marketplace and do. So what I'm here to do is to answer the 4 questions Brendan sent on an email when he said, here's what we want you to talk about. And it's basically answer these 4 questions. How have I developed my message? How have I developed my skills? How have I developed my brand? And any other tidbits of advice. So that's basically the framework of what I'm going to give you over the next several minutes, very directly. So the first one is, how did I discover my message? If I were to ask you, what is the most powerful machine in our entire society? The most prolific and powerful machine ever created by man in our society, what would it be? A machine. Here's what it is. It's the television. The television is the most powerful machine in our society. We even orient our entire living rooms around it. We orient our family around the centerpiece that is that television. That television is our window to the rest of the world. We identify the world around us and we identify ourselves based on the images and messages that come through that television. We orient our living rooms, we orient our lives, we orient our psychology around that machine. And that machine has been doing awful, ugly, destructive things in our society. Let me tell you what the blood sport, there is what's called a blood sport of competitive media going on in our society. And it is the most destructive influence in our lives. Let me tell you how it came about, because it didn't start this way. Once upon a time, there were only 3 television networks. And it was real reporting, and they really wanted to tell you what was happening in the world. And it was fair and balanced, not a mantra or a slogan, but it was about showing you the rest of the world. And three TV channels were your only options. Well, now we've got thousands of TV channels for all of you to choose from. Beyond that, we also have web television channels for you to choose from. Now there's tens of thousands of options to choose from. On top of that, there used to be just a couple of radio programs that could come in on your dial car radio. Well, now there are thousands of radio stations for you to choose from and tens of thousands of podcasts for you to choose from. Magazines. I mean, walk up to a magazine rack today, and it's just unbelievable the number of options you have in the most, ridiculous of niche content categories. And then you've got blogs, and you've got digital magazines, online magazines, and the rest. So here's what's happening. We are being bombarded with options of content. And it is continually sort of proliferating your attention span. The information overload of options that all of us have in our lives every day is incredible. Media understands this. So how does media, if they are to get your attention amongst all of this competition, how do they get your attention? And trust me, they know you better than you know you. They know your psychology. They know how your brain works. They know your desires. They know your pain. And they know your fears better than you do. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you're in your car and you're running the traffic on the freeway and you're late and you're starting to get upset. What is it that's going on that's causing this traffic? It's in the middle of the day. There's no reason for this traffic. And then you get up close enough to where you can see that there was an accident that happened, must have been long ago, because it's been cleared to the side of the road. It's not impending traffic, but it is still crawling at a snail's pace. Why? Rubberneckers, right? People are just slowing down to look at the wreck. Now, all of you people are probably good, Christian people, and you don't want to see anything ugly or heinous or nasty or disastrous. But what happens when you get up and close to that car wreck? You look, because you cannot help yourself from looking. It's in your primal nature to look when you pass. Media understands this. But let me give you an alternative example. Let's say off to the side of the road wasn't a car wreck, but off to the side of the road was a beautiful, majestic sunset. What happens to the traffic? Just whizzes on by. Nobody's stopping to look. What does that say about our nature? We are more attracted to ugly, heinous, and sensational than we are to beautiful, wonderful, and miraculous. Media understands this. One key point you need to know: your mind is not designed to make you happy. Your mind does not give a crap about your happiness. Your mind's sole job is to keep you alive. It's survival. And so it's constantly on the lookout for danger. It's constantly on the lookout for attack or things that might interrupt your survival. And so when you show it negative, heinous, and ugly and sensational scenes, it lights up like a Christmas tree. And it's constantly now in processing in that worry mode. So this is what's going on in our society. We are being bombarded with media who's trying to drag your attention, knowing that the way to do it is through sensational, shocking, lewd, scandalous media, and it's bombarding our brain. And here's how it ends up working. Let me just show you as a physical demonstration so that you remember this as you sort of understand how the brain works. Here's your brain, okay? It's an open vessel. It will hold anything you put into it. It'll hold mother's milk. It will hold cyanide. It doesn't filter, it doesn't judge. So, here's what happens. This is negative media. It is filling up your brain with dark, dirty, ugly, nasty messages. Now, your mind can only see the world as dark, dismal, dangerous, and worrisome. Because what you feed it, like a computer, input, garbage in, garbage out. that becomes your view of the world. What do you do about this? Because you are surrounded with it, you are bombarded with it. Well, the one thing you can do, and I'll give you a couple of other things you can do, is you can find clean, clear water. And you will have to go out and seek it, because the dirty water will beat a path to your door. And sometimes that dirty water is your own conversation to yourself. But the only thing you can do proactively is seek out positive, wholesome, abundant, prosperity-based cleansing information. And like a dirty glass, if you just pour water and let it overflow, clean, clear water, you end up with a glass of clean, clear water. You end up with a mind of clean, clear thoughts, clean, clear prosperity, abundance, possibilities. You see the miracle around you. We are living through some of the tumultuous times. The media is going to make you think that it's the worst of times. I promise you, there has never been more opportune times in human history for the budding entrepreneur than right here, right now. But it becomes difficult to see that possibility because media is constantly filling our mind with negative, dangerous, and worrisome media. So, I remember Frank Kern, when I interviewed him for Success, he used this analogy, which I thought was great. Here's what it's like. Imagine you had an 8-year-old daughter, and you invited somebody over for dinner, and you're in the kitchen cooking, and they're in the living room with your daughter. And you walk in on a conversation, and that person is sitting down right in front of your daughter talking about murder, talking about death, talking about tragedy, talking about scandal. What would you do with that guest? Kick them right out of the house and never invite them in. But that guest is sitting in your living room every night, feeding your family. Now, your brain, your mind, is like an 8-year-old. It believes whatever you feed it. It doesn't discern between news media halfway around the world and the reality of your personal existence. That's the great tragedy happening in our society. Here's how the creative process works. You get in life your outcomes by what it is that you create. Easy enough, right? We're all creative beings. When you come into this life naked, scared, and ignorant, what you get in life after that is anything you create. So what are you creating? You create what you expect. We've all heard expectation leads to manifestation. So then that begs the question, well, what is it that's driving our expectation? What are we expecting if that's ultimately going to deliver my results? You expect what you think about. And this is why most of the towering personal development books have been focused on this process. Think and Grow Rich, As a Man Thinketh, The Power of Positive Thinking, The Magic of Thinking Big, because this starts the entire creative process. But I'll say there's one step before that. Because how do we possibly control our thoughts? 24/7, 365. What is it that we're thinking about? You're thinking about whatever you put in your ears and in front of your eyes. That's it. So if you're on the way to the office and you're turning on the news media as you're driving in your commute, your brain, which has been lit up by all the danger and scandal, is processing that unconsciously all day. It's driving what you're thinking about. That thinking process is driving your expectation of what's possible in the world, what's possible for you, and that's ultimately what's driving your creative engine to produce the outcomes in your life. Where your attention goes, energy flows. What controls your focus controls your life. When I had the chance to interview Mario Andretti, I asked him the one question that says, what's the number one tip to being a great race car driver? You know what his answer was? Don't look at the wall. I said, what do you mean, don't look at the wall? He says, your car will go where your eyes go. Never look at the wall. Interesting enough, I live in San Diego. I was trying to learn how to surf. And one of the first lessons that the surf instructor gave me was, point your eyes in the direction you want your board to go, because your board will follow your eyes. What's the one thing you never do if you are a tightrope walker? Why? Because your body will follow your eyes. Your body will follow your eyes. Your life will follow the direction your eyes are pointed. And if it's pointed at negative, sensational, nasty news media, that is the direction you are pointing your life. These are the messages we are surrounded with. This is my fight. This is my message. Instead, I want to show these messages and litter people's mind with what's possible, the abundance, prosperity, and the miracles that surround us every day. Every day, we are presented with the 12 most ugly, heinous, nastiest things that happen in the world. And then it's paraded morning, noon, and night, morning, noon, and night. The same day, millions of wonderful, amazing, miraculous things happen on the same planet, but you never hear about it. Unless you pick up the pages of Success Magazine. So I say, our main message is, through all the ugly, heinous, nasty things that you're surrounded with, there is at least one beacon of hope and opportunity. There's one place where you could see people doing amazing, wonderful, miraculous things, overcoming great odds, and still doing life-changing things in the world. And you'll find their example, and you'll learn how they do it. And that's what we want to present to you inside the pages of Success. So I want to help you find your message. And I just want to offer you an alternative view about how to find it, because it's how I found mine. There are two ways to find your message or to find your why. The one is the one everybody is easily familiar with, and that is, what is it that you want? What do you like? You know, what are you fighting for? Okay? That's easy. We talk about that all the time. But here's one that I think a lot of people are not so focused on, and that is, what do you hate? What do you hate? Do you hate global warming? Do you hate breast cancer? Do you hate the mistreatment of mammals? Do you hate homelessness? Do you hate injustice? I hate news media. CNN, with my book, they asked me to do an article. Seriously. CNN asked me to do an article. So, you know what the title of my article was? Is Wolf Blitzer Hurting America? And then I went on and just did this killer attack on news media, kind of like what I just did for you here. Knowing, I said, if you are truly fair and balanced, you will publish your own criticism. And if you don't, I will publish it on my blog that you didn't. Hey, we all need an enemy. We all need an enemy, right? David needed Goliath. Luke needed Darth Vader. Hey, even God needs Satan. So sometimes the best way to find your message is to figure out what you hate and what you want to fight against, because that might just be the passion that fuels you. Lance Armstrong, who I think is an amazing human being, I don't give a crap if he took drugs, because they're all taking drugs. He still kicked everybody's ass on a bike. But he participated in the Tour de France before he got cancer, and he was mediocre at best. It wasn't until he had to fight cancer, and then he had that fight, that he ended up becoming an unbelievable world champion. Let me show you this quick little video.
Critics say I'm arrogant, a doper, washed up, a fraud, that I couldn't let it go. They can say whatever they want. I'm not back on my bike for them.
How to become a world champion? The kind of suffering you do on a bike, you better be wanting to kill something. And he wanted to kill cancer. And that's how you find that kind of power. So I ask you, does your why make you cry? I mean, is it so powerful? And is it so painful that it makes you cry? Martin Luther King said, if you haven't found something that you're willing to die for, you aren't fit to live. So I'm curious here about this room. Is your message focused on what you love or what you love to hate or fight? How many people is on what you love? Okay, interesting. How many people on what you love to hate or fight? Interesting, fantastic, good for you. Of course it is, because if you hate the imbalance of equality in the workplace for women, that means you also love empowering women. But like for me, do I love personal development and do I love success? Of course, but I actually hate watching the destructive force of negative news media even more. So it just depends on what really gets your goat. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to come from that place. I'm a competitive person, so I like to fight. In my book, when I wrote the book, the first thing I did in the introduction was to define my fight, because then I could write the rest of the book. But if I had no fight, it's no big deal. So I suggest test them both out. Take yourself through both sets of the process and figure out which one it is for you, and certainly it could be both. So let me talk to you next about how I develop my skills. Here's what I see as the great gap between the haves and the have-nots, and it will get wider and wider and wider. The path to the American dream used to be very simple. Get the highest education, get a good job, climb the ladder, get a pension, get the house with the white picket fence. Easy, 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 no big deal. Well, today, the world is flat. We're all technically connected to each other. Now your competition isn't the business down the street. It isn't your local chamber of commerce. It's every chamber of commerce in the world, as well as every second bedroom and basement occupied by a teenager and a laptop. They're all your competition. That has set up this epic opportunity of better than ever in human history. It has also created epic competition. So it is not going to be your academic degree, and it's certainly not going to be your corporate training that's going to give you the advantage. It is going to be your ever-developing and evolving skills, your emotional resilience, your ability to adapt to change, your ability to present, your ability to communicate, your ability to network, your ability to develop personal brand. I'm talking to the choir because you're here. But at the same time, this is the great divide. Few people will have the ability to proactively go out and develop their skills, and so the have-nots will get bigger. But the haves will also get bigger, and the bridge between that gap is a skills gap. So let me tell you a philosophy that I learned very early on when I was 18 years old. Somebody said, here's how you want to structure your financial life. It's a 10-10 plan. So you want to take the first 10% of any money you make, and you want to give it back to help others. We've all heard that, right? Tithe 10% to help others. But this is the other key point. You want to take the other 10% and you want to tithe it to yourself. You want to use 10% of every dollar you make and reinvest it in your own personal development. Now, when I made $150,000 a year as an 18-year-old, $15,000, no big deal. You make $500,000, $50,000, you make $1 million, $100,000, you make several million, it becomes more and more difficult to spend that kind of money. However, interestingly enough, the top CEOs, the top athletes, the Olympic champions, they all have the highest paid coaches they can find. Why? Because they know that that is the separating factor to them going on and becoming world champions. So take 10%, this is how you fund your skill development. 10% of all your income goes back into reinvesting in your own personal development. Brian Tracy, very early on when I was still a teenager, I learned this from him. He said, for every dollar you invest in your personal development, it adds at least $30 to your bottom line. Now, where can you go get a 3,000% ROI anywhere in the financial markets today? Where can you get a 300%? Where can you get a 30%? So instead of putting it in your 401k, instead of putting it into the savings account or buying equities or stocks, trust me, the best investment you possibly can make for your economic future, for your retirement plan, is to invest it in your own evolving personal development. So We talked about the mind, and let me just give you two things to just always run it through. There are two things you need to do with your mind. There's an old Cherokee tale. Grandfather's talking to his grandson, and he says, "Grandson, inside each of us are two wolves, and they are at war with each other. And one wolf is a bad wolf. It's angry, it's fearful, it's nasty, it's lazy. And then there is a good wolf, and it is giving and loving and abundant and disciplined." And the grandchild looks up at the grandfather and says, well, which wolf is going to win? And the grandfather smiles and said, "Whichever you feed." Inside each of us is a bad wolf and a good wolf. Anything you see on news media, any heinous act you see other human beings doing to the world or to each other, inside each of us lies that potentiality. Everything you see is a part of your nature as well. But what gets demonstrated determines what's been fed. My mentor, Jim Rohn, said, you got to take the worst of your nature and drive it into a small corner. And you got to take the best of our nature and you need to build it and embolden it and make it and grow it. And so realize at all times you are feeding one of these two wolves inside of you. And the one that will win is the one that you feed the most. So number one is protect your mind. Go like this with your mind as much as possible. I personally do not ever listen to any news media at all whatsoever. I know that some people think that's crazy and makes you ignorant and all the rest of that crap. I seem to be doing pretty good. I am really cognizant that inside is an 8-year-old brain, and I do not want it subject to just whatever news media wants to fill it. Now, I just suggest for you, go on a news media diet. If you need to figure out what's going on for 20 minutes, be very selective, fine, but protect it vigilantly, because it will be the path to your door. I mean, I can't walk through an airport without Wolf Blitzer being on, and he's throwing the situation room. The world's coming to an end. Every freaking 5 minutes, the world's coming to an end. So number one is protect it. And then number two is to feed it. Number two is to find as much clean, clear water as you possibly can flush through it on an ongoing and regular basis. And so I consider the feeding of my mind like a race. And it's a race between everybody else in the world. How often and how abundantly can I feed my mind positive and instructional and inspiring messages? And so I suggest every time you are driving in your car, my car does not move without gas or some sort of instructional CD going. Some CDs I've listened to 60, 80 times. The Challenge to Succeed by Jim Rohn, I've listened to that thing 80 times by now.